For assignment 7, the goal was to implement a GUI into our already existing application so that we can access some information inside of it and possibly modify the world. So what I wanted to do was not only modify some of the physics attributes, but also implement global and relational positioning so that we can understand how that works. So the base game is still the same. I still have the asteroid fields with the bullets that shoot out. But the very top box describes how many shots have been fired so far. So you can see I shot off 4, 5, 6, 7, and it'll just keep going up from there. Right beneath it, I implemented a box that allows you to control how many shots per second you fire. So you can crank that all the way down to 1, and you can get a very slow firing cannon. And of course, you can crank that all the way up to 60 and get a very, very fast, rapid cannon. The other thing I changed was the simulation speed, so you can see these bullets are flying around, and then if I slow it down, we'll go into slow motion, and you can watch all of the movement happen. You can see like the collisions going on there much, much more smooth. The shots per second is not relative to the simulation speed, so if you have 60 shots per second and a 0.1 simulation speed, it is to real life seconds and not to the simulation seconds. So if you shoot out, you can see the balls kind of go crazy because they, all are collapsing on top of each other. So we'll crank the speed up back to around 1. I also implemented a button where if you click it, it'll immediately snap the speed back to 1, and we'll turn down our shooting speed to something like 10 or so. So right here in the center, I created this arrow of truth in Blender because it is always telling the truth about its location. So for all the positions, I have it so that you can control the X position of this arrow, the Y position, and the Z position. And this is its global position. And then we'll get this back to center here. There we go. So then we also have global rotation implemented. So you can see as I click Y+, that is the wrong button. If I click Y+, you can see it rotates around the Y-axis, and so the reason I put it on the origin is because it's very easy to see with the visible axes here. So you can see we can rotate the arrow. I can also rotate it back along the same axis. Let's get that level there. Same with the X-axis too. You can see it tilting up, tilting down. There we go. And finally the Z-axis, so you can tilt it left and tilt it right. And now for the local rotation, basically the arrow, if you were to keep track of this Z-axis, and if you were to move the arrow slightly tilted to the right, you can see that the global Z-axis is still perfectly upright, but the axis for just the arrow is actually off to the side. So if we were to rotate this on the Z-axis in its local coordinate system, or location, I guess that's a typo. If I click Z+, we should see... Oh, I must have had the Y off a bit, but I must have had it flipped 180 or 90 or something. But you can see that it actually does rotate around its local coordinates. I guess if we know this information, we can actually continue to rotate it here. And then... There we go. If we do Z+ now, there you go. So you can see it's close to the global Z. And then if we dive the nose down forward using the local X, which you can see is the up and down of the arrow, no matter what direction the arrow's in. So no matter what Z global position it's in, X and Y will always point the arrow upwards and downwards. So that's the main difference for all the global and local positioning. So one of the things I noticed as I slowed the simulation speed down was that some of these asteroids were spinning hyper fast. They are spawned randomly, so sometimes there's a off chance that they spawn in each other, so they do actually now have a max velocity. That one still looked like it was spinning fast, but compared to how fast they were spinning before, it pales in comparison. They were spinning at like Mach 3. So another thing I noticed was even with simulation speed set to 1, and if I crank the shots per second up very high, I was noticing that the shots were coming out in a perfectly straight line, which isn't really realistic for a weapon of any type, except I guess a laser. But basically anything with recoil is going to have some jitter between every shot. So to kind of simulate that, I added a little bit of a jitter to the particle spray. So if you look to the side quickly, you can see that they all kind of go out in a cone now, instead of in a straight line, and it gets due to the distance, it gets less accurate over time just because the cone the cone volume gets bigger and bigger. But yeah, and if you actually look at the character, you can see it kind of jitters side to side. So not only did I modify the projectile spray, but I also modified it such that the character receives the random recoil as well. So they get kind of shot side to side as the random values are shot out. So you can see all these bullets interacting like crazy there. And if you check the top left again, you can see that the shots fired is 336. That's a lot of shots. Shoot off a whole lot more. Hopefully the physics simulation doesn't get mad. But yeah, so just to recap, we have the Arrow of Truth, which has buttons for all of its global and local, or adds global position and then local rotation. And then we have the shots per second, which can slow things down or speed things up. And if we crank the simulation speed up, we can see things speed up. That's probably not actually 2x speed, as I assume with this many shots out in the world, it's probably actually bogging down the simulation at this point. I can feel it's kind of below 60 frames a second at this point, but yeah, if we can return the speed down to 1, it should be good. If we slow it down, we can notice that still a bit laggy, but possibly a little bit better. But yep, the simulation speed also affects your movement speed, so you're moving much slower, but you have much finer control over your movement. Still the same damping though, so positionally it will take the same amount of distance as a full speed simulation to slow down. But yeah, that's my assignment 7.